Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Scholmeyer. This program is made possible by
Welcome to Aging Insight, everybody. I'm your host, John Ross, here with my co-host and business partner, Lisa Scholmeyer. And together, we are elder law attorneys who help people navigate through their retirement years. We know that people generally want to protect and preserve their resources. They want to stay out of the nursing home, and they would like to not be a burden on their friends and family as they continue through the aging process. We also know that with knowledge, with education, and with a little bit of planning, you can do it. You can accomplish those goals. It's not that hard, but there is a ton of information out there for you to absorb, and that's why we show up here in the studio,
Right.
is to give you that information.
Right, and you know, John, I often tell people that as you get older, you would think life would get simpler, but it seems like it doesn't. You know, between picking Medicare plans every year to, you know, navigating through referrals, through your medical clinic, your doctor's office, it just gets a little overwhelming sometimes.
It does. It can be terribly overwhelming, and because you've got the interaction between so many different areas of real estate and personal property and investments and tax and government entities and Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and veterans benefits and all of these things pile on top of you, and if you don't know how to do it and you don't do it right, you can create some problems. Now, I would say that, Lisa, in our practice, you could almost cut our practice in half between the prevention of problems,
Right.
and the cleaning up the aftermath,
Right, the fixing of the
the
problems.
fixing of the problem. And you know, the thing is that most problems can be fixed. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody who I've just been talking to in casual conversation who would say something like, well, you know, my mom's been in a nursing home now, so, you know, and we're private paying, but now that she's already in the nursing home, there's nothing that can be done. And that's just not true. There's more that could have been done had we planned
Right.
years ago, but there's always ways to fix these problems. It's just that sometimes the solution to the problem is almost as bad as the problem itself.
Sometimes.
So prevention, a whole lot better.
Right. So, you know, John, and what's really frustrating to me is when, you know, you visit with somebody and they did their level best to get good advice and to do the right thing. Because, you know, most people I visit with, you know, they're not trying to be underhanded. They're not trying to mess things up. They're trying to get the best information they can, get the best advice they can find, and to act on it. And one of the most frustrating things about the part of our practice where we fix problems is when we are fixing problems caused by other professionals who, you know, ultimately, John, you would think would know better.
And should have known better.
Should have known better.
In many cases, just should have known better and didn't, and did something that their clients relied on, unfortunately, to the client's detriment.
Right. So I thought in today's program we might talk about some of the common missteps, if you will. Sometimes I could just about call it malpractice, but we'll go with missteps that we see other professionals make, that we often are brought in as the fix-it team, so that way you can learn and be on the lookout for these things.
Yeah, maybe we can. Maybe we start with the what do you call it? The dresser drawer.
The dresser drawer deed, because you have to have the alliteration to make it stick. You know, the dresser drawer deed.
That's right. Well,
not a legal concept.
yeah, no, definitely not a legal concept.
Yeah.
So the background behind this is, and we've seen many attorneys give this advice. That this is typically This advice typically comes from attorneys who have been practicing for a long, long time, and this is something that they had used in their practice historically, but continue to use today. And essentially what this is where, you know, a family will come in and they'll say, well, we want to protect our house and be able to pass it down to our kids, but we want to stay in control of it while we're alive, and we don't want it to be in jeopardy if our kids get divorced or anything like that. And so the attorney's advice will be to have them sign a deed, deeding the property to their children, but then just hold on to it. Hide that deed in a lockbox or the proverbial dresser drawer, which is why we call it the dresser drawer deed, because the attorney has said, here's the deed, it deeds the property to your kids, now just don't record it at the courthouse, stick it in the dresser drawer, and then when you die, your family will be able to come in, pick up that deed that was signed years ago by you, take it down, record it at the courthouse, and the property will be theirs. And you know, saying it out loud like that seems reasonable enough.
Seems that way.
I mean, mom and dad are staying in control of the property because it's still in their name. But this is
according to the courthouse.
According to the courthouse, anyway. Yes. But this is really a bad idea.
It really is a bad idea. First of all, we have seen that these dresser drawer deeds, sometimes those deeds don't stay hidden, and they can be recorded prematurely. And then sometimes we see a situation where a person intended to protect their property by using this type of deed, and maybe they needed, before the end of their life, they needed nursing home care. And then what happens is the Medicaid system that pays for most nursing home care, they monitor the property and the probate filings following the death of a patient who received Medicaid. And should a deed pop up at the courthouse shortly following the death of a nursing home patient, Medicaid has taken the position that that property is part of the estate and that deed is an ineffective transfer of that property. And so what the property owner was trying to accomplish by signing that deed years before and putting it on hold and not actually filing it at the courthouse, actually, John, that deed doesn't offer any protections.
It really doesn't. It's just a bad idea. It can go bad while you're alive. It can go bad after death. There's just several different ways that it can go bad. There are alternatives out there. There are things called beneficiary deeds, things called transfer on death deeds, and probably one of the more powerful ones out there is something referred to as a ladybird deed, which can have the result of keeping you in full control of your property so that it's not subject to anybody else's problems. You having the ability to change over time if you want it to go to somebody different.
Right.
And still protect that property from somebody like the state of Texas Medicaid agency after you die. Those are very powerful tools, but these are often tools that have been developed in more recent years. As the laws have changed, the strategies to work within those laws to protect your property have changed. Unfortunately, the knowledge of some of the folks out there has not, and so they're still giving advice that maybe would have been I hate to say it would be good advice because I don't think it was ever good advice, but it was certainly not as bad advice, say prior to 2005, than it has been in the now 12 years since.
Right, and a lot of times, John, what's so frustrating is this will be a trusted, long-time attorney. I've even had attorneys that have served as judges tell their friends and family that this is the way to go, and it's just not good advice. So don't assume that just because someone's an attorney or had a higher position that they know the details. Your property is too important to risk.
Well, and I've had lots of those folks come in and say, this did seem a little weird.
Right, to hold on to a legal paper like that,
Yeah.
it's.
So anyway, we're gonna keep talking about some of these mistakes out there. We just got to take a quick break. So stick around. We'll be right back.
The Wadley Senior Clinic has been such a blessing for our family. Because they specialize in geriatric care, they take the time to really focus on Dad's needs. Their exam rooms are specially designed for seniors, and they offer lab and x-ray on site. With monthly educational programs on health and wellness of the mind and body, our healthcare questions get answered. Best of all, they accept Dad's Medicare benefits. See what the Wadley Senior Clinic can do for you. Wadley Senior Clinic, where healthy relationships begin.
We all need a little help sometimes. That's why Twin City Rehab is here to help. Twin City Rehab guides people of all ages through a smooth recovery experience in their new facility on the corner of Morris and Hampton Road in Texarkana, Texas. We specialize in physical, occupational, and speech therapy and wound care, IV administrations, and parenteral nutrition. We offer inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation, private suites, transition apartments, and a state-of-the-art gym. Our goal is to get you back on your feet and back at home. Twin City Rehab, next to Reunion Plaza Senior Care.
Welcome to Heritage Plaza Nursing Center, where a compassionate, skilled nursing team is dedicated to the care of our residents and committed to creating a better social and physical environment. With comprehensive rehabilitation services and individualized programs, we help each resident live life to the fullest. At Heritage Plaza, you feel the difference and see the results as we nourish the spirit through our Lifetime Wellness program with a variety of activities. Come tour Heritage Plaza Nursing Center and see what we offer the seniors of Texarkana and the surrounding areas.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Aging Insight. And we're talking today about the mistakes that we have seen other professionals make that we end up getting brought in as the fix-it team. So we thought we would share some of those mistakes with you so you can kind of be prepared. And first, we talked about the dastardly dresser drawer deed.
Yes.
Where
Say that a little faster and see how that
yes,
works out.
Works. So, and how that doesn't really accomplish what the family is trying to accomplish, but we keep seeing them. So we know that people are still getting the advice to prepare such a deed. And John, one of the other areas I see a lot of problems with is when a will is prepared and we have a blended family situation. So we have maybe a second marriage or beyond for the senior couple, and they may have been married for 5 years or 25 years, but their will gives the other spouse a life estate right to live in the home, the marital home. And that marital home may have been the separate property of one of the spouses. And so the idea here is if there's a death and it was that the home was the separate property of the now deceased, that their spouse can continue to have that roof over their head for their lifetime as long as they choose to live there. And I see a lot of wills drafted with this language giving that life estate to the surviving spouse. But John, in theory, it sounds great.
Right.
In practice, there's always, and I say that very definitively, there is always a problem.
Yeah, and this is one of those problems. This starts with a problem on the professional side of things, because oftentimes when people visit with attorneys, you often get two types of attorney-client interactions. The clients typically always will come in wanting something. They've got some idea in mind. And so I've had lots of clients who have come in and they've said, well, when I die, I want my wife to be able to live in the house, but if she remarries or anything like that, well, then she can go live someplace else. And so I want you to write that into the will. And at least in my practice, I'm going to stop them right then and give them about 40 different reasons why that's a bad idea. And in the end, I will probably have talked them out of doing that bad plan. That's one type of attorney. The other types that you often see are the ones that just follow the client's directions. They take the position that, well, that's what the client wanted, and so even if it's a bad idea, ultimately that was the client's choice to go down a bad road, and so they're going to follow their instructions and draft this up. So that's how you end up getting these wills, and it can be spouses, it can be
parents to children.
Yes. But you create, when you have this life estate, you've got one person that has the right to occupy it.
Right.
But
or more.
Or more,
Yes.
Possibly, yes, we've seen that as well. And then you have other people who are eventually going to be the ultimate possessors and owners of the property. And you have just immediately created a conflict between the present interest holder and the future interest holder.
That's right. And so, John, where we see these problems is particularly, like I say, this situation comes up mostly in blended families and second marriages. And often the future interest owners are the adult children of the deceased. And what we see over and over again is a problem where the adult children feel like the surviving spouse is not keeping up the property. The surviving spouse feels like, why should they invest anything in maintenance for the property because it's not their property ultimately. You just get a lot of conflict. I've seen situations where the adult children have made every effort to make it unpleasant to occupy the property. I've seen situations where the surviving spouse invites a granddaughter and her family to come live in the property with her, and of course the adult kids don't like that. Most of the time so far, we've ended up back in the courthouse to have a judge tell everybody how they're supposed to act. And it sounds so simple that we give a life estate in the property, but in reality, who pays the taxes? Who pays the insurance? Who's responsible for maintenance? What if it's a major maintenance item like a septic system? What happens if the survivor does bring in caregivers who are family? Is there rent? All kinds of issues come up, and it just is not a good idea.
Yeah, and to give you the ultimate example of all of this, I had a client who her and her spouse had been married for 30, 40 years. I mean, they'd been
quite
married
a long time.
Quite a long time. They had built a house on his separate property, so ultimately it was his property, and in his will he left his wife the right to reside in it, and then ultimately it went to his kids. The very example that we just talked about. And I represented the family, the surviving spouse and her family, and we were in court, I would say at least once a year, sometimes several times a year, over a period of 9 years. And the only reason it stopped was because she died.
She passed on. And so
otherwise it would still be going on. If you create that kind of conflict, it never stops. Right. And ultimately, in this case in particular, if you were to add up the costs over that whole time frame between lawyer fees and court costs on both sides of this, they probably could have bought another house.
Right. And so, a solution to that is, instead of providing a life estate to the surviving spouse, exchange some other asset. Either give the house outright to them and your kids some life insurance money, or vice versa. But you have to be very particular how you plan for a bequest like that. So.
Yeah, just avoid those sort of conflicts if at all possible. So that's the next one, but we've got to take another break before we get to the end of our discussion on this. So stick around, we'll be right back.
All
all need a little help sometimes. That's why Twin City Rehab is here to help. Twin City Rehab guides people of all ages through a smooth recovery experience in their new facility on the corner of Morris and Hampton Road in Texarkana, Texas. We specialize in physical, occupational, and speech therapy and wound care, IV administrations, and parenteral nutrition. We offer inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation, private suites, transition apartments, and a state-of-the-art gym. Our goal is to get you back on your feet and back at home. Twin City Rehab, next to Reunion Plaza Senior Care.
I'm so glad we found the Wadley Senior Clinic. Their team specializes in caring for older adults, and their doctors listen and work with me to keep me healthy and independent. With monthly educational programs, x-ray and lab, and state-of-the-art exam rooms, I get expert care and understanding about what I'm going through. Best yet, they're easy to get to right off the interstate at Jefferson. See what Wadley Senior Clinic could do for you. Wadley Senior Clinic, where healthy relationships begin.
Welcome to Heritage Plaza Nursing Center, where a compassionate, skilled nursing team is dedicated to the care of our residents and committed to creating a better social and physical environment. With comprehensive rehabilitation services and individualized programs, we help each resident live life to the fullest. At Heritage Plaza, you feel the difference and see the results as we nourish the spirit through our Lifetime Wellness program with a variety of activities. Come tour Heritage Plaza Nursing Center and see what we offer the seniors of Texarkana and the surrounding areas.
Welcome back to the last segment of Aging Insight here. We're talking about some lawyer mistakes out there.
Yes, they happen.
They do happen. And particularly we see these oftentimes done by attorneys who either have not kind of kept up with the law and are still doing things based on laws that have long since changed, or that it's not mainly their practice area, and so they're giving advice on something that they're really probably just not qualified to give advice on. And we see this, unfortunately, pretty regular in our practice where, as you described, Lisa, people tried to do the right thing.
Right.
They went and saw a professional to get professional advice, followed that advice to the letter, not realizing the whole time that the advice was just bad. And so we started out by talking with the dresser drawer deeds. If somebody ever tells you to sign a deed and not record it, just run screaming and go find somebody else. If somebody is advising you to give somebody else a life estate in property like that, it's generally, that's also probably going to be some bad advice there. And then the last one, and this one comes from attorneys, this one comes from CPAs, this one comes from financial advisors. I've had lots and lots of people give this last piece of bad advice.
Right, and the last piece of bad advice that we're going to talk about today is when another professional advises you in response to your concern about asset protection and making sure that there's a home or money left for your beneficiaries, and maybe you're concerned about future health care costs. We often see professionals tell the worried client that they should just give away the property that they want to see go to the hands of their future beneficiaries, and they should give it away now. And we see this advice mostly from attorneys or CPAs who are not really thinking about the impact that the gifts could make on the client's eligibility for future government services. We also see this advice given because maybe a CPA is only focused on the income tax concern and not thinking about the true need that senior and retiree is likely to have, which is care and medical attention that comes from some of these government and VA benefit programs. And John, the other thing that nobody ever thinks about on the advice to give away is, for some reason, the senior often thinks that their family, whoever their beneficiaries, whoever they're going to give this property to, is just going to keep it locked up, safe and sound, and nothing is ever going to happen to that property. And if the senior really needed it back, it's always going to be there till the very end.
That's right, because I've got the best kids, best kids in the whole world, trustworthy, honest. You just can't beat my kids. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe you've got the best kids in the whole world who would absolutely hold on to your assets and protect and preserve them for your benefit. But what if they die?
No.
Now who has it? Do they like you? Are you sure?
Right.
What if they get divorced? Do you think their divorcing spouse likes you? What if they get sued? Do you think the plaintiff in the lawsuit likes you? What if they beat you to the nursing home? I've had countless clients who have put their assets into their kids' names, which was a bad idea in the first place, but they had done it. They had put their assets into their kids' names only to have one of their kids suffer a medical crisis or an accident that caused them to be disabled and need something like Medicaid, not be able to get the benefits because of mom and dad's money.
Right. And so we see this advice because, you know, there are situations where the advice was given to gift your property away, and if you can get out of your name for more than 5 years, then it's not counted as assets toward any future needs that you may have. And sometimes, John, it works.
And that's the problem.
And but the problem is you're risking it, and there are so many other ways to accomplish that same goal without the risk of giving the property away. But you know what? It takes a little more knowledge. It takes a little more lawyering. It takes a little more professional attention to detail about how to make it happen. It's a whole lot easier to just say, well, we'll give it away and put that account in your kid's name or put that CD over in your kid's name, than to actually take the 3 to 5 steps that's necessary to truly protect it and have that asset available for you.
Yeah, particularly if you know the person who's giving that advice wouldn't know how to do it in the first place.
Right.
And so they rely back on, what do they do know? Well, they know that you can give it away and that'll take it out of your name, and hey, hopefully nothing does happen to your kids. Not ever realizing that there are very powerful tools like asset protection trust that you could use to shield those assets without giving them away.
So John, ultimately, we get called in a lot of times to fix the situation. Sometimes reports have already been made to governmental agencies. Sometimes we realize there's a crisis at hand and there's something else that needs to be done. Again, there's often a solution, even at that point.
Most of the time.
A little messy sometimes, but there's often a solution.
That's right. And of course, you're not going to make these mistakes because you've been watching the show. And you're going to watch the other shows, because we're going to have more next week. And if you want to catch one of the ones that we've done in the past, all you've got to do is go to aginginsight.com, where you can watch past episodes. You can look at our Aging Insight magazine. You can even listen to our radio program, which are both on the website and live every Saturday on 98.7 FM and 740 AM. So you can catch us there. You can catch the shows. You can catch us on the internet. You can catch us in the magazine. You can catch us anywhere.
You can even catch us in person.
That's right.
Sometimes. So we're glad you joined us for today's episode of Aging Insight, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by